This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. If the fantasy sports industry had a talent show, like Fantasy Sports Industry's Got Talent or something like that, I'd wager all my money on our guest on this episode. From Sports Illustrated, it's the one and only Jennifer Piacenti. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. It's fun to just sit and talk for a little bit and not necessarily even talk about work the whole time. Just talk.
Exactly. No, I love to share resources in the fantasy industry, and that obviously includes analysts and people out there. I want people to find analysts to follow that they can connect with and enjoy the content and help them win championships and do all that stuff. So you are obviously an outstanding individual and a huge part of this fantasy community. So it's my pleasure to have you on here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So for listeners and viewers that may be unfamiliar with your work, can you share a little bit about what you're doing with Sports Illustrated these days?
Yeah, so I am entering my 4th season with Sports Illustrated. Actually, it's like time flies when you're having fun, right? I cover fantasy football and betting for Sports Illustrated, as well as betting for Major League Baseball, tennis, all of that. So I'm pretty much on year round. My 2 favorite sports are baseball and football. So I basically have a really fun job 365 days of the year.
Yeah, it never stops. We were just talking about that, where a lot of people will just focus on one sport. You do a lot all year round. So again, it's awesome to have you on here. You clearly have a passion for sports. Let's rewind and find out where that all began. Where did your passion for sports come from?
It's pretty funny. I never played sports growing up. I did ballet and I was in the theater and everything that girly girls do, but I absolutely loved going with my dad to his softball games. So my dad would play intramural softball with my uncles, and they were actually quite good. And the fun part was, if I went with my dad to one of his games, I could stay up late past bedtime and I could get like a Coke from the igloo. Well, in the meantime, I started really starting to enjoy it, right? Rooting for my uncles and my dad, understanding the game of baseball. And then they would play basketball. They would get together. They'd watch the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. So I just kind of learned, it was always in the background. And I didn't even realize how much I enjoyed it until actually I went to New York and was kind of surrounded only by arts. And I realized that I felt on an island only being involved in the arts. So I would like to go on the weekends and watch like the Yankees play at the local bar and have a burger. So I guess it kind of happened naturally. As I said, I didn't play sports as an adult. I've started playing sports, golf and tennis, and I absolutely love it. And it's quite a difference from doing ballet, I will say.
I think that's a really cool story. It makes sense. Like, you kind of get out of that element that you grew up in, and then you realize like that was a huge part of your life, but not directly, but right. You got all those sentimental feelings about it. And I can see that's pretty cool. So, at the earlier stages of being a sports fan, did you have teams and players that you liked?
And so when I was young, we went to so many Mavericks games, and back then the Mavericks were horrible. So again, I was like, basketball's kind of fun, but team never wins. Then we would go to Rangers games. And again, Rangers, I like the Rangers. I like looking at the stats. You've got to get ice cream and a helmet. I mean, what's better than that? But the Rangers would never win. They'd always get beat by the Yankees. So I have to say, Kevin, it was the Dallas Cowboys, because when I was a Dallas Cowboys fan when I was young, we were winning a lot of Super Bowls.
Yeah.
We were winners. We were having great Super Bowl parties, and it was a lot of fun. So I would say the Cowboys were probably the first team that I was really excited to root for.
And these days you are an Astros fan, is that correct?
Yes, which is
where did that come from?
Yep. Yeah, where did that come from? So as I was older and I started to really appreciate the game more, I kind of got frustrated about the DH, and I thought there was more strategy if the pitcher would hit. And at that time, if you will recall, the Astros were a National League team. So they had that great run, I believe it was 2004 where they surprised and got to the playoffs before Albert Pujols took Brad Lidge deep, and that was really embarrassing and awful. But anyway, before they started their rebuild and moved to the AL, they had a little resurgence there, and I was really excited. And I said, you know what? The Rangers were a losing team. My family lives in Houston now, and I respect this part of baseball better. So I'm just going to decide that I'm going to choose my Texas team, and it's going to be the Astros because I like their baseball. And then, jokes on me. Of course, now they're in the AL. So.
Yeah, they joined.
Still like it better than the Rangers, though. They're still a much better baseball team.
Yeah,
despite
that's
this
funny because they're obviously same division and everything. So
yeah, they are now. They weren't then.
So as a sports fan, what's the worst loss you ever experienced?
I would say it's the 2019 World Series to the Washington Nationals, because come on, the Washington Nationals, the wild card team. Basically, we lost the World Series to Juan Soto, who absolutely owns the Houston Astros. But, I was there in person for it, so it was bad.
Yeah.
Didn't feel good.
That's a rough one. How about the best sports experience you've had as a fan?
So the best sports experience would be 2017 when we did win the World Series. I know there's an asterisk around it and all of that, but just be me for a second as a fan in the moment, not knowing any of that, right? My first World Series ever. And my dad and I went, we had said that our birthdays are in October. And we had said for years, if the Astros go to the World Series, that's what we're doing for our birthday. So this was a long time coming, right? So they came, he flew me down from New York. We went and we ended up getting this really great game. It was like the Dallas Keuchel, Clayton Kershaw game that went into extra innings. It was like one of the longest World Series games ever, with all these lead changes until finally we walked it off at home. And so, of course, that was just the hugest moment for me. I remember we came back to my dad's house, and we stayed up till 4 a.m. just eating ice cream and talking about it. And we couldn't believe this had finally happened and how cool it was. And then, of course, they did win the World Series that year. And I was in New York for that, sitting at a bar with my friend who was a Dodgers fan. So that was awesome, right? So the whole 2017 was fun for me. And then when everything came out later, I had a moral crisis about how do I feel about it? That was my best memory, one of my favorite stories. But anyway, I've decided to just let it still be one of my favorite memories and best stories.
Of course, because you got this nostalgia, component to it. You did it with your dad. That's amazing. That's special, and you can't help what they're doing right behind the scenes and whatnot. But that's really cool. I love that. I love that story. So, did you bring your dad? Did your dad become an Astros fan? Did you convert him?
No. He already was. They've been living in Houston for a long time.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they moved to Houston. But I never lived there, actually. Okay. I grew up in Dallas. That's why I'm a Cowboys fan. That, I'm sorry, but it's in the water there. It's funny because I meet so many people in the industry that are Cowboys fans, and none of them are from Dallas. And so I'm when people tease me about being a Cowboys fan, I'm no. I'm from Dallas. You don't understand. It's in the water. You can't not be a Cowboys fan. It is required. You are a card-carrying Cowboys fan if you live in Dallas,
for sure,
no questions asked.
I love it.
They were already living in Houston for quite some time, and had already become Astros fans because they loved the stadium. They would go all the time to the games, and I'm one of those people that I think it's fair. If you move cities, to support that new city's team, you don't have to always. Everybody's got a different comfort level of what they think is loyalty to a team. But if you move cities and that's your new home and you're going to live there the rest of your life, then don't you want to root for the local team so you can go to their games and be involved and make friends and join in that fan base? One of my favorite things about sports is that it should be, anyway, a place where we're connecting with people that we wouldn't necessarily connect with over a goal, right? To win this game, or to just not be embarrassed in a game. Sometimes it's a low bar if you're a Panthers fan, but it's not politics. It's not fighting. It's we all come together for a minute and we have one common cause, and it's that good feeling of camaraderie. And so I think that supporting your local sports team, or supporting the team you grew up with, and having a community, or having a fantasy football community, is one of the best things to add to your life for quality of life, and just enjoying time, just enjoying yourself.
I think that's a fantastic stance. I think it's true. You're right. I mean, what's better than a high five, with strangers
Right.
in the
With a
stands,
stranger.
right? Or exactly.
Exactly.
I love that stuff. So back to the fantasy sports industry's Got Talent show, right? You obviously have a big past when it comes to theater and arts and singing, dance. Was that something like from an early age that was like your goal to dive into that?
So yeah, from an early age, like I wanted to be a ballerina. Then I wanted to be a singer. Then I wanted to be on Broadway. And I just, my parents were very kind to let me take dance lessons and let me audition for the high school musical and all of that. And I loved it. And when I graduated high school, I wasn't even sure that I wanted to pursue the arts, but fortunately I was able to get a scholarship in them. And I thought, okay, well, I'll try it, see what happens. And maybe I'll be a teacher. Because I thought there's no way to make money doing the arts. Because it's very difficult to make money in the arts. If you think it's difficult in fantasy football content creation, try the arts. So I did that for a while, and then I started teaching. I was actually a professor at the university for a couple of years, and I decided I was teaching all my students to chase their dreams and follow their dreams and dream big, and I felt like I hadn't really done that. I'd stayed at the same school, gotten my master's degree, took a nice adjunct professorship, which is all great, but I was 23 years old, and I was living still in Dallas-Fort Worth. Not a bad place to live, but I hadn't challenged myself. And so at that point, I just decided I was going to move to New York. I had no job. I had no money. I had $800. And I was like, I'll just figure it out. So I wasn't even sure that I could do it, but I just went and I started auditioning, and I ended up, fortunately, being able to have a career in New York, singing and such like that. And of course you do have odd jobs along the way too, but it was a pretty fun life. I didn't necessarily know I would do it. I think I knew I wanted to do it when I was little, but I didn't know how I would make that leap from being able to take care of myself with an arts degree. I will advise anyone who really has a passion for something, when you're young, there's no reason not to just try.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. So how long were you in New York, and what was that like for you?
15 years.
15. Wow.
A long time. It was great. I always say New York is like an adult amusement park. You work hard, you work really hard. You play really hard. You get to do the coolest things, right? I did amazing things in New York I couldn't have done anywhere else. I saw every Broadway show. I starred in shows. It was just a great experience. You eat at the best restaurants. You're also sometimes wondering how you're going to pay your rent next month, because it's extraordinarily expensive. And when you're in the arts, again, you can have a great job, and then all of a sudden one day it's just gone. The show closes, you're done. And then you're all the way back, in line with thousands and thousands of people, auditioning for one tiny spot. So it was wonderful. I would not change a minute of it. I made some great friends. I met really smart people. One of the interesting things about New York is I used to say this all the time, it's kind of funny. Nobody moves to New York to be a loser, right? Anybody who's moved to New York is super motivated. Doesn't necessarily mean they stay or they succeed or they like it, but you meet all these people with big dreams that are willing to work hard, and they become a great community. And then most of us kind of come to our senses and then move somewhere where you can own a washer and dryer.
I love it. No, that's it's a great point. It makes a lot of sense. And it's such an experience that, I know people obviously that have lived in New York, and it's just a whole different world. I love visiting. It's a special place, and it's cool to have, a run of 15 years like that. I love that. So when along the way did you discover fantasy sports?
And so when I was in New York, again, I remember being at home and having a baseball game on and watch it. And I'd heard people talking about fantasy baseball. This started with baseball. And I was like, I can play fantasy baseball. So I signed up for some online fantasy baseball. I think it was ESPN at that point when it wasn't for money. And it was a head-to-head. And I signed up and I was like, I can do this. Boys, whatever, I can beat boys. This has always been my attitude. And I won. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. So then I started trying to play more leagues. And interestingly, I was actually in a show, and I got like fan mail from someone after it and said they had noticed in my bio that I mentioned I love to play fantasy baseball. You know how we always put like the weird thing.
Yeah.
And he said, do you want to join my fantasy baseball team? So immediately I'm like, okay, this guy's a creeper. But then after some research, I realized he's like on the board of all these arts organizations. He's totally not. He's like a really cool guy. And he invited me. I helped him manage his team. We ended up in this league of all hedge fund guys and lawyers, and it's in Park Avenue. It's got an auctioneer, full day catered. We're throwing around real money. We're bidding. It was the coolest. And let me tell you, I learned fast that way because I was like, we're going to win. We're going to compete. And I'm very competitive. You guys probably already figured that out. So I kind of got a crash course there. And then from there, I met Jason Collette, who is big in the fantasy baseball industry. He was the auctioneer who invited me to Sirius XM. There's about 25 people that were allowed to come watch a Tout Wars draft last year. And long story short, that's where I started. That night is when I met all kinds of people in the industry and where the domino effect started.
That's amazing. So when you first started playing, what was it that hooked you? What did you love about the game? What was it that captivated you?
You know, a couple of things. First of all, obviously, I said I'm like uber competitive, and I just love checking all the time and seeing how much better I could be. And if I could sleuth it, the puzzle. I love the puzzle of fantasy. And then I also loved how much it connected you to all kinds of different teams. So you have an even deeper understanding of the game. So it was no longer just watching my team or the Yankees. I was watching the Minnesota Twins or the Kansas City Royals, and that leads to a deeper understanding of the game. And it's the same with fantasy football. Like, how do I know who Kamani Vidal is? You know, these are the things, you know these teams inside and out, and it gives you a deeper appreciation for the game.
I love that. So do you have one league right now that's like your favorite league, like the one that means the most to you?
So I would say that league I'm still in, which is called Moneyball, so shockingly. And that league. And then I also have a couple other home leagues. They're all the ones that are most important to me are my leagues that are still based in New York. So I have it. Okay. Also, they're auction leagues. All the ones that are really important to me, or salary cap, we call them now. I love playing that way.
So do you fly back? Are they live drafts, obviously? Or do you
so
go back
I used to, and then with COVID and everything, a lot of things went online. And so I've been able to do it remotely now. But certainly if everything lined up, I would, because that live experience of a salary cap draft is just, there's nothing like it. If you guys have never tried it, do it. It's not hard. It's not tricky. It's so much fun. And the teasing you can get in real life and the games you can play with getting people to bid up for when you know who their favorite players and favorite teams are. And it's just a blast. It takes longer, but it's totally worth it.
And then especially with a live auctioneer, that's pretty special.
It's so cool. And let me tell you, like, I always joke, I'm like, I love shopping. And basically that's shopping for me. It's like, who are my designers? Who are my discounts? And I'm putting it all together and making like the perfect wardrobe. That's my team. I love
That's great. That's a great one. So who's the biggest rival you have in fantasy? Like whether it's been over the years or currently, like, who's the one person you got to beat in a league?
Adam Ronis.
Okay.
Obviously. You have to beat Adam Ronis. If you don't beat Adam Ronis in at least one league, then you're worthless. What are you doing? So yeah, I love it when I beat Adam Ronis. I also kind of like it when I beat Howard Bender. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I can see that'd be a good one. Yeah. That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
So when you described like how you first just kind of got into the industry, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Like what did that experience lead to?
So again, I think like my approach to life is always like follow what you love and then work really hard to find a way to make it work for you. And this is the same with fantasy baseball. I got a little lucky at the beginning, and then I started working hard to lock in the opportunities once I saw the door open. So after that, we kind of all went to hang out after that draft. And that's where I met Nando DeFino, who I think everybody in the industry knows. He's just one of the most likable guys in the world. And he was working for a TV channel that was filming. He sent me an email afterward and said, hey, you want to try to be on TV as a baseball expert? So with Adam Ronis. So here I am, like, Adam Ronis, like the smartest guy in fantasy baseball. I can't be an expert next to him. I was so nervous. But anyway, I went and did the show. Nando hosted it. He is just a phenomenal host, as you know. It was so much fun. And from there, it just kind of dominoed. So I came back on the show. Nando referred me to another job. Rick Wolf, they invited me to an auction league, that my other auction league in New York, which is organized by Steve Cozzolino. I play in that with like Ariel Cohen and Derek Carty. So Rick Wolf then approached me. He was in that baseball league and he said, hey, we need a woman that knows fantasy football. And I was like, oh, I play fantasy football too, but kind of like on the side, like, and he's like, well, how good? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I won my league last year. And he's like, okay, fine. So come on in, do the interview with Howard Bender. And again, I remember I was so nervous. I had my setup, like my lighting and all this. And Howard had sent me, questions ahead of time and I studied them. And we got on the call and it was like talking to an old friend. We just had so much fun. And by the time the thing was over, he's like, you want the job? And I was like, yeah. So we did our live stream a couple times a week. And that's when it really started becoming more of like a career path, if you will. I was just working contract with Fantasy Alarm, but from there is where it built to where I now have a full-time position with Sports Illustrated.
Yeah. So what are your best memories with Fantasy Alarm and in time like doing Sirius XM?
There's so many. I have to say the people were so much fun to work with there. I loved doing the show with Fensterman. We had our Friday night show, Alarm After Hours. We just had so much fun. Probably my best times were with Howard on the live streams when we would do the start sits on Sundays and Thursdays. But also we had a series where we did a roundtable where there were like 4 or 5 of us with like Ryan Hallam, down Malin would be on there. It was before Andrew Cooper. It was John and Pemba and Bender. And we would have so much fun arguing, cutting up, and this was kind of during COVID. So it was, during COVID, we were all finding ways to be visible, to talk. We would talk sports, we would talk other things. And it was just a great camaraderie there. I really, really enjoyed Fantasy Alarm and have nothing but kind, wonderful things to say about everyone that works there and the quality, just really high quality content.
Absolutely, for sure. So how did the opportunity at Sports Illustrated arise?
So I also worked for Sirius XM, as you know, on the show. And so just one day out of the blue, I got a message from Michael Fabiano on Twitter saying like, hey, do you want to be on my Sirius XM show as a guest? I was like, oh, sure. Michael Fabiano, he's such a star. So I went on his show. And then after it was over, he's like, hey, you're really great on the show. Thanks so much for coming on. And like a few months later, he sends me a text and he said, hey, we're hiring new people at Sports Illustrated. Can I give him your resume? And I was like, yes, you can. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. I loved being at Fantasy Alarm. And I thought, oh, do I really want, full-time job? And do I even really qualify for a full-time job? And, but I went through the series of interviews and it felt like, yeah, this is a leap. I'm willing to do it and really to try it. So it kind of, at that point, it meant kind of giving up a lot of the singing and things like that on the side, right? So it kind of was a decision to decide to do a full-time, job in the industry, as far as like balancing my creativity and things like that. So that's always been interesting, kind of not closing the door on that chapter, but just kind of moving on to the next chapter. And they've both been wonderful chapters, and I'm super happy doing what I do.
I love that. So what experiences and skills from your performing arts days, like, have you found to be most applicable or used for what you're doing right now?
That's a good question. I think that my comfort, I don't feel super nervous about being on camera or talking necessarily, because I always did that. So I think that helps as far as someone who's never had to do public speaking. I don't think I'm like extraordinary on camera or anything. I just think I don't feel intimidated by it. The other thing is, I think it helps to be able to tell a story. And when you're an actor, you're a singer, you're an opera singer, whatever level you're singing at, you have to tell a story. And that's how you get the job. That's how you get the role. You can do everything technically, but if you don't help people feel the story, if they're not with you, then they're not having fun. And I think that's really important when you are creating written content, video content, audio content. Why? What's the story? What's the entertainment? Even when you're building a DFS lineup, aren't you telling yourself a story as to why it's going to work? And then even if it doesn't work, you don't care as much because you had fun, right? So it's all about the enjoyment. Everything about this should bring you joy. And I think that the joy of telling a story has been the easiest thing to take over from that career, the thing that's given me maybe a little bit of a different spin than others have.
I think that's great. Yeah, storytelling, that's what it's all about, right? Can you describe like your process, like for analyzing and preparing all the fantasy and sports betting content, like with multiple sports? I mean, that's a lot, and it's different than a lot of people just like that are in the fantasy industry.
So it's a lot. So I spend a lot of time in Radar 360 looking at reports and running reports. For baseball, what I found is, I don't know if you guys ever follow me in baseball season, you'll see that I will post a lot of player props and baseball bets. And it's the same for football, but because we're in baseball now, I'll talk baseball. I like to take a long-term trend and a short-term trend. And if they overlap, that's when I will trust it as far as a bet. So for instance, if, Kyle Schwarber's career numbers versus Justin Verlander are really good, and Kyle Schwarber has been hitting Schwar bombs all June, then I'm probably going to bet on Kyle Schwarber. And that's an overly simplistic thing. And then also, like, if you can layer more on top of that, like, also the park factor, it's in Coors. Also, all those things. The weather's good too. The wind's blowing out, these kind of things. And it's the same with football, really, right? It's not as much with football as far as like with baseball, you have the one-on-one stats. So you have that history. I'm not sure, like, I know we all like to talk about, Boston Scott touchdowns versus the Giants.
Yeah.
Like, but how often is that, right? That someone just like specifically, that's a little random and kind of fun, but probably unlikely. So, I look at like the efficiency numbers, the matchup, the defense. The first parts that usually start when I'm targeting player props for football is looking at the defense, to be honest, not the offense. I don't look and say, hey, CD Lamb is on a tear. I look and say, who are the Cowboys facing? Okay, how bad is their secondary? All right, they're pretty bad. CD Lamb's been really good, this kind of thing. So I usually start with the defense for football. And the same thing when I'm just handicapping totals and who I think is going to win and against the spread picks. So I usually look in football at defense first. And honestly, you know what? That's what you're looking at in baseball too, right? Because pitching's defense.
Yeah.
So start with defense. That's what I would say.
It's a good message. Good message. So what's been the most rewarding part of working in the industry like you have?
I think the most rewarding part is the community of, especially when you can help people. I just love, like, occasionally I'll get a message and be like, hey, this isn't a big win. I bet $5, but your player prop helped me win $9 today. And it just made me feel good. And that, I love that. Or, hey, your start sit advice made the biggest difference because I couldn't decide. And then I started, Tank Dell, you were right. He went off. That is the best feeling. Now, of course, you also sometimes get those people that are angry with you. And obviously we give advice, but everybody has to make their own decision, right? But I have to tell you, those people are very minor. That's a minor percentage. Most people are really cool and really nice and really grateful. And I know there's a lot of trolls out there on Twitter and social media. But if you put positive energy out there, I think most of the time you get positive energy back.
I think that is very, very, very true. I love that. So how has the fantasy sports industry and sports betting industry especially changed since you first kind of dove in, and what do you see on the horizon?
So sports betting is so much bigger now than when I started. It was like nothing. Like I didn't really do sports betting. I just started like 6 years ago. I didn't even really do sports betting. Now I am majority. I wouldn't say majority. I'm at least 50%. I'm majority during baseball season betting. During football, I'm 50-50. It's just where the future is, because some people don't have the patience to play the season-long fantasy, or they don't have the network to play the season-long fantasy. And even those who do play season-long fantasy also want to bet or wager because, again, you know your players. You know that Alvin Kamara has X amount of catches per game. You want to go ahead and bet on that. You want to double down on your team, right? So I think that's the biggest change. I also see a lot more women playing than before, which is a really cool trend. I see a lot more super flex leagues, which is not my favorite trend, but that's me personally. Like, no team has 2 quarterbacks. Dallas Cowboys, you don't play with 2 quarterbacks, but whatever. That's, I plant my flag on that. Stop with the super flex, but it is what it is. I'm old. What can I say?
I love that. Let's talk a little bit about the fantasy community. You obviously mentioned some names so far, but how much have some of the relationships you've made along the way meant to you over the years, and talk a little bit about like the live SFB drafts and those experiences.
So they're great. Like, I don't know. I mentioned Adam Ernest, for instance. I've known him since that first call we did, a TV show we did in New York. Howard Bender has become a great pal of mine. I play fantasy football with these ladies that Howard set up the league, I don't know, 5 years ago. They are the best ladies. We talk all year. We have so much fun. They are also really good fantasy football players. Like, I cannot rest on my laurels versus these ladies. Like, they're killing me. So I would say just it's all wonderful. I think mostly it's all positive. I've become great friends, obviously, with Michael Fabiano, with Lindsay Rhodes. Lindsay and I had so much fun. We went to the Women in Fantasy Football, like high stakes leagues draft in Las Vegas last season. Yeah, we had so much fun. Sam Holt joined us. She was there. Kelly was brought in. We had a good group of ladies, and we had so much fun. So I would say that probably the most important part of fantasy football is the community, right? Otherwise, play player props, go play prize picks, which is also fun. Go do that too. Do them both. But the community aspect is what's so important with fantasy football. That's why people have family leagues or their old college leagues they've played for 20 years. It's great. It's fun. It gives you something to talk about other than politics. Thank God. It's just great.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the fantasy experience is that league experience and the bonds. My home league, it's friends from elementary school, junior high, high school, college, like family. Like, it's just so, I think that's the most special part about like the fantasy experience. But you're right, there's so many things beyond that do lead into the betting and props, and there's a lot of ways to have fun with fantasy. But you're right, community is definitely special. And again, those live SFB drafts are amazing. Yes. You're running that back, right?
Running that back. I'm hosting the Scott Pitchwell draft from LA at Trophy Smack this year. So tune in. Jeff Ratcliffe and I will be taking you through all the good decisions everybody's making at their drafts. I've got to review my scoring. I'm like, drafting and broadcasting is always tricky for me. I'm like an okay multitasker, but like actually drafting a really good team in broadcasting. So I gotta be up. I gotta study.
Well, I'm looking forward to being down there again because that was so much fun to go down there to LA for that one. It's the one to be at, in my opinion. So I can't wait.
It's fun, like, come on, we're bowling. Come on.
Yeah. So Trophy Smack. I mean, they know how to do it for sure. Any chance you'll get to the expo?
I won't be at the expo. No, I have a lot going on this August, so I won't be able to make it to the expo this year. Maybe next year.
Hopefully next year, because that's a really special event for sure. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. I'll just throw out some questions. Let me know what first comes to mind. What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry right now?
I would say talking to other people, like podcasting.
That's great. LA or New York? What's better? Where do you prefer to live?
New York.
is that an easy answer? What do
Not
you
an
enjoy
easy
most
answer,
about
because you know what?
where
I
you're at
don't
now?
really live. Here's the tricky thing. I live south of LA, like
Okay.
close to San Diego,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's
That's
amazing. And I
yeah.
love it here. So right now, like for my life, I would go here.
Yes.
But like generally, like I would say living in that city, you got to do it at some point. Living in a city is just the best experience.
That's great. If you could interview any athlete or sports personality, who would it be and why?
I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to have to go with Babe Ruth. Because, like, first of all, was this guy legit? Was he real? I don't know. Are these legends? There's a few videos. I found them on YouTube. Can we compare him to Shohei Ohtani? I mean, they throw so much faster now. Like, I have a million questions. How did he do this drunk all the time? How did he do this with his level of fitness? Like, he had a dad bod, but like he did incredible things. So I would say it would have to be the Babe.
That's a great answer because it's what a great thing to think about. Like, can you imagine going to watch him play and see?
Yeah.
You got me thinking on that one. I like that.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite Twitter troll of all time?
No, Fantasy Receipts, obviously.
Okay, I think that's the wrong answer. I think it's your dad. He's amazing.
Oh God,
he's amazing. Like my daughter's 11, and I've shown him some of the tweets. I've showed her some of the tweets, and I said someday this is going to be us. And that's how cool it is. Yeah. It's so fun to see that.
He is the number one Twitter troll. I should have known. You know what? Yeah, he's been encouraged now. Dang it!
Fantasy Receipts is the follow up, huh?
Yeah, Fantasy Receipts is the follow up.
Pretty impressive trolling for sure.
Yeah.
But your dad. No, seriously, it's really cool to see that. I love that. I mean, as a girl dad, like I just think it's the coolest thing to see what you guys do, and it's pretty good. It sounds like it seems like you have a really special relationship.
We do. He recently was out here. You know, it's funny because I just started playing golf, and my dad loves to play golf. He plays like 6 days a week now that he's retired. And I was like, I don't know, like golf, it's lame. I started playing and it's so much fun. And so now he has that on me too. Cause like now he's like, see, I told you golf was cool. And when we hang out, we spend 4 hours golfing together. And so it's great because I know a lot of people aren't fortunate enough to have a really good relationship with their parents. And I really count myself lucky that I do have a good relationship with both my parents, and they're both wonderful. And it's great to be able to spend time doing something active with my dad too. Like he plays tennis with me. Like, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun.
Great.
Yeah.
What are your favorite hobbies outside of fantasy sports and outside of theater?
It's so funny because fantasy sports used to be my hobby, and now I guess like theater music is my hobby, but so I'll go outside of that would be now tennis and golf, both of which I've taken up in the last few years, and both of which I really love. They're really hard. The tennis is like really hard, besides physically, mentally. There's so much in that game. It's like playing chess, right? And I'm like nowhere near where I need to be, though I'm starting to learn when I watch others play. When I watched the French Open, Wimbledon, like, oh, that should have been a volley. It should have approached down the line. Like, but I can't actuate that yet. So like, there's endless. Like, I could play for 100 years and never master it, and I kind of like that because it's something to always work and grow. Golf. Okay, this is not a tall tale. Okay, this is going to sound like a fishing story. This is a true story.
I love it.
On Friday, on the 18th hole. Almost 100 feet out, more than 90 feet out from the rough, I chipped the ball into the hole. Chipped. I fell to the ground laughing because it was so like, first of all, the men I was golfing with were like, no one's going to believe you. I can't believe we didn't film it. I've never seen anything like that. I'm like, yeah. And I'm retiring now because that will never happen again because I'm a really bad golfer. Like really bad.
Just chipped it right in, huh?
But that's what's so fun, right? And it keeps you going back. And I think that golf and tennis are like that. Like there's always somewhere to get to. And I guess eventually with tennis, maybe like my body will slow me down in like 40 years or whatever. But golf, you can play forever and you're always going to have fun. And it's such a beautiful way to spend a day, as long as you don't take it way too seriously, right? Take it to.
Yeah, for sure.
I have slammed a club once or twice. I'll be honest.
It happens. It happens. Well, pickleball would be the next transition from golf or from tennis.
So
right?
I judge pickleball. Okay.
Oh, you
I
do?
have become a tennis snob, and
Okay.
any like TikTok video, YouTube video where they're making fun of pickleball players, like I love them.
Spot on.
Like they're spot on to me. Like I don't know how I became this person, but I am definitely a tennis snob. And if you play pickleball and brag about your pickleball, it's so funny because there's a lady in my neighborhood. She's a pretty good tennis player. She's always been a tennis player. She started playing pickleball. She got injured playing pickleball last week,
no.
and she was literally limping around. And I'm like, that's what you get for playing pickleball. Like you deserve it because you played pickleball. She's been playing on the court.
Scott Fish had a major injury, I think, once upon a time playing pickleball. True story.
Pickleball.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not without injury. So you may as well like go for the whole thing. Like use the whole court. Give a big swing. Let's go.
Well, what's your all-time favorite opera?
La Boheme. And I would say if anybody doesn't appreciate opera, and I understand why you wouldn't, it was even an acquired taste for myself, even though I sang opera in New York. La Boheme is so beautiful. You don't have to even know what they're saying. I mean, what they're doing is if you watch Broadway, Rent is the Broadway version of La Boheme. Okay. They just took the story of La Boheme. They made it rock and roll. Rent was a huge hit. You can just listen to La Boheme and your heart and your body know what's happening. It is the most beautiful score. Your heart will leap out of your chest. And even if you think you don't like classical music at all, put it on one day, put it on in the background. There's a few different versions. There's actually one that they did about 15 years ago that was a Broadway version of La Boheme that was pretty cool. You could just grab that soundtrack, or you can get a traditional one with like Cecilia Bartoli or someone in it. Listen to that, but you will not be disappointed. It's not long. It's the same length as any movie you would watch on TV. It's not a Wagner 2-day affair. It's short opera and it's gorgeous. So I highly recommend it. La Boheme, everyone. La Boheme's the opera. If you've never enjoyed opera, that's the one.
There you go. What are your top 3 favorite Broadway shows as a spectator that you've ever seen?
So this one's harder because I've seen a lot and I like a lot, and they're going to be kind of weird probably. I like The Drowsy Chaperone. I like The Spelling Bee. And I mean, I probably have to go with Les Mis as number 1 overall. But honestly, like if you ask me a different day of the week, I'm going to have a different answer because I love so many Broadway shows. And when I was a little girl, my mom and I would have when we had this thing in my family where you'd have dad-daughter day, mother-son day, or mother-daughter day. We would do these things. I come from a family of 5, so I'm the oldest of 5. So we tried to do these things where we would have one-on-one time.
Yeah.
My mom and I, because I'm the only girl, we would do Broadway musicals. We would go, and I watched every Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire. I love the dancing musicals. That's what we would do on Friday nights. We'd go to Jack in the Box and then go home and watch Broadway musicals. And that was the coolest thing I'd ever done. And then I dreamed that I was going to grow up and be Sid Charisse. Clearly I'm not Sid Charisse, but you gotta have dreams.
I love that. What's your favorite theater production that you've ever been in or played a role in?
Again, this is going to depend on when you ask me the question, but I'm probably going to say Pirates of Penzance, which is the role I've done the most, and is, again, if you guys don't know if you like opera, this is actually an operetta. It's super funny and super fun, and there's a movie version with Kevin Kline and Linda Ronstadt. So if you want to break into it and find out what it's about, it's hilarious, and it has gorgeous music at the same time. And songs from it, even though you don't realize you know songs from it. So I would say Pirates, because anytime you're doing Pirates, I've done it in New York, I've done it on tour. The audience is always with you. They're always having fun, and you just feel that energy coming back. So I would say Pirates, but I also love doing Candide. I did that in New York City Opera. I loved doing The Merry Widow, which I did at Houston Grand. I loved doing Mikado, which isn't really done much anymore. The Boyfriend, Sayonara, Brigadoon. I don't know. I love them all. But
So many.
Pirates of Penzance will be my official answer.
I love it. Do you have an all-time favorite TV show?
I'd say it's probably probably friends. I know that's a very like everybody has that answer, but you know what? If it's nighttime and I'm like, I just want to like zone out and laugh and feel like I'm with my friends, I turn it on. Like it's on, was it Nick at Night? It's not Nick at Night. It's some channel. It's on all night here on the West Coast. So I'll turn on for a couple hours.
No, it's a common answer, but there's a reason why. It's a great
Yeah.
show. How about all-time favorite movie?
You know what? I have a backup. You want to know what my other favorite show is? You're gonna laugh.
Yeah.
But you know who knows this? Michael Salfino and Howard Bender, and they tease me about it endlessly. It's Columbo.
Columbo, no.
I can watch old Columbo. In fact, I have them all recorded and I've seen them many times. And I know, like, you know, for instance, I know William Shatner is in 2 episodes and I know what they are. Dick Van Dyke did one. I mean, Jack Cassidy's in too many, in my opinion. But like, I am like a super Columbo fan. So that is a strange fact about me.
That is funny. That is great. I love that.
It's funny.
How about an all-time favorite musician or artist, band?
So, I mean, I would probably go with I know, again, the Beatles are my favorite band ever. And I really think there's no debate as to them being the best musicians. And then strangely, this may sound really crazy, but I think if everybody hasn't given their entire catalog a listen, the Bee Gees are one of the best bands ever. And I know we all just think about Saturday Night Fever and all of that, but listen to their entire catalog. It's really, really brilliant. In addition, I like, you know, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin. Like I'm kind of more of a rock and roll girl. I'm not really big into bubblegum pop and I'm not a super rap person either, but maybe that's just because of my music background. I like things that are like, I don't know, a little more, melodic, if you will.
Yeah.
But that being said, there are certain songs I like of all of those. Like I like some Miley Cyrus songs, you know? In fact, I've determined that the song The Climb by Miley Cyrus is actually about my golf game. Listen to it. You guys will know what I'm talking about. Miley Cyrus is singing about golf in her song The Climb. That's what it's about.
There you go. You heard it first.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite beverage and a favorite food?
And so I would say generally my favorite beverage is probably like a really good whiskey. I am definitely a whiskey girl. And my favorite food is pizza. Like hands down, every day of the week, every meal of the week, I can eat pizza. That is it. And that comes from my childhood. Again, my dad actually has a restaurant pizza oven in his home. And when I was growing up, he would make pizzas for me, all my friends. He has pizza parties. So for me, pizza is a comfort food besides being amazing. Like even when I go to Italy, I order pizza. Here I order pizza. I like deep dish. I like thin crust. I don't care what kind of pizza you're giving me. If it's pizza, I'm in.
I'm not going to argue that because pizza is pretty darn special.
Pretty good.
But what at this time are you most grateful for?
That's such a good question because there's actually a lot of things I'm really, really grateful for. I would say the thing I'm most grateful for is always be able to, did you hear that recent graduation speech by Roger Federer? He talks about how tennis is great because you have to move on from every point. If you don't, you'll never win the game. And though he's won like 80% of his professional matches, he's only won like 53% of the points.
Wow.
But you have to stay in those points, and sometimes they can be close or you'll never win the game. So I guess what I would say I'm grateful for is always being able to start with a fresh slate. And I've had a lot of career changes, a lot of different things in my life, a lot of things that have happened in my life, and always being able to have the ability to have a new start and have the people around me support a new start, a new change, a new city to live in, a new career, and a lot of changes like that. So I'm very grateful to have always had that support around me and that ability to be able to just start a new point.
I think that's wonderful. Do you have any advice for people that want to get more involved in sports content, fantasy football content, fantasy baseball content, sports betting? First
off, make sure you love it. Make sure you really want to do it. And then Start engaging with people that do it, and don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions. Actually, I've had a lot of people write to me on Instagram and say like, hey, can I get your advice on this? I'm happy to give it. And I'm no expert. I'm the person still reaching out to other people for advice. But there's a chain. As we've been here a year or two, we can help those. And it goes forward. Howard Bender helped me. Let us help you. And don't be afraid to be different. Because one thing I see all the time on Twitter is basically a copy paste of groupthink, and like one way to write, everybody's saying this phrase right now. Don't just write in your own voice, just be you, because that's what makes you interesting. That's what brought you to this game. Don't feel like you have to be a carbon copy of somebody else. At the same time, it's good to have goals like, oh, I want to have a career, say like Liz Loza. I love everything she does. She's like someone I want to aspire to be like. I want to follow some smart things she's made, but do it in your voice. Or maybe you want to be a Matthew Berry, right? Matthew Berry's a great aspirational person to have. Be Matthew Berry. Don't copy Matthew Berry. Be you. Be your version. Then you and Matthew Berry can both exist. There's only one Matthew Berry. There's only one you. And both of you are really valuable.
That's wonderful advice. I love that. That was fantastic. Anything else that we haven't covered before we close things out here?
I mean, I think we've covered pretty much everything. I'm sorry that you guys had to listen to so much about me. I hope that it wasn't boring and too much about musicals and things like that. But, it takes all different people, I think. And sometimes all we do talk about is like trying to one up each other and who's smarter than the other one. And we're all competitive and all of that. But it's good to remember there's people behind that. And the people are what make the fantasy football community great. So keep going out there and doing your research and interacting and finding your voice. I totally recommend that. And I recommend going to the Fantasy Football Expo and going to Scott Fishbowl Live and making these connections, because they can become lifelong friendships for you. And that is absolutely the truth, that you can find lifelong friends and supporters and cheerleaders right here on this podcast, right here on social media. There is a community, and it's a beautiful community. So I encourage you all to embrace it, though. Don't take it too seriously. Remember, if you get one of those trolls like Rick Piacenti, you can ignore them.
I love that. That's great. No, it's true. I mean, this community is amazing, and I love it because people come from so many different backgrounds, and your background is as unique as anybody's, and it's fun to celebrate. It's fun to celebrate and fun to share, and it's fun for people to get to know a little bit more behind the scenes. So thank you again for coming on. It was truly an honor, and I wish you all the best. Can you tell listeners, viewers, where to find you?
Yes, you can find me at Jen Piacenti on X or Twitter, at Jen Piacenti on Instagram. And of course, right now my byline is at Sports Illustrated. I'm occasionally also on Sirius XM. And for the fall, we're waiting to see if it will be renewed, but we will see. I've had a podcast called Waiver Wired, which is on Omaha Networks and distributed. You can also find it on ESPN+. So fingers crossed we'll have that fantasy football podcast coming for you too. And I have a question for you, Kevin. Sure. When are we going to do an interview about Kevin? Who's going to do that interview?
Hey, anybody who wants to come do it, I would be honored.
I feel like we should turn the tables here and flip this around. I think that would be fun, because people listening to this podcast want to know what your favorite musical is.
Now, I will love to share that if someone wants to host that. My favorite music. If you want to ask what my favorite musical is, I will say it's probably Wicked.
Okay.
Probably Wicked. The producers was pretty fun. I was in San Francisco when I saw the producers, and Martin Short and George Costanza. I forget his name.
Yeah, Jason.
Actually,
Alexander.
Yeah, Jason Alexander. Yeah, they came and performed. I think they were prepping for New York. So I was like, that was the coolest experience.
Great answer. I forgot, because you're in Seattle, right? So you do get some previews.
Yeah.
Jersey Boys preview down here in La Jolla. Did you see Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel in Wicked, or did you see one of the other cast?
No, I saw it after that.
I was so lucky. I saw the original again. This is because I lived in New York. It's like things that you only get to do. It was amazing, but Wicked's a great answer. And I forgot about Producers. That is such a good show.
It's a good one. But such a good show. Broadway shows, so many great ones out there. Go watch them.
Go watch them.
Go watch them. Until next time. Again, so much fun to have you on, and I can't wait. I'll see you in a few weeks at SFBLA.
Yeah,
we're gonna do it trophy smack style and have a great time. All right, let's wrap that.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.